Hi, I'm Dom Liberati.
No, I was supposed to go first.
Nope.
Me, then you, and then I.
That's true.
Nobody's paying attention.
Eager, man. It's the caffeine.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of SVT Time. My name is Dino Monoxelos.
I'm Dom Liberati.
And as a guest today, we have Wylie Gelber from the band Dawes.
Hello.
Cheers.
Cheers, cheers.
Yeah, well,
whatever.
Oh, you broke it.
That was yours, Mazel.
All right.
It's good. We're off to a good start.
So, Wylie, thanks for coming in today.
Of course.
You were actually involved, well, about a year and a half ago when we first started talking about the Heritage 50th. You had come in and lent us your time and played around. And actually, unfortunately, I wasn't there for that. They wouldn't let me in the building at the time. But
that was my call.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're cool now?
Yeah, but we've mended it.
Did you get the check?
Yeah, I'm all right.
All right. I made sure the check was in the mail. But anyways, like Dom was saying, and from what I saw in the footage and everything, like you did a lot of playing, and you had like a lot of great ideas.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man.
And as an Ampeg artist, you're currently using VRs.
Of course,
on the road, right?
forever. I've been using VRs for as long as I've been, maybe 10 years probably. I mean, I used to tour with an old SVT until inevitably that just doesn't work for physical reasons or whatever. And then as soon as I found out about the VRs, I got it, and it's been the only amp I've ever toured with.
Cool.
Yeah.
And 810 cabs, of course.
I use 810s now, but I started off using the 410 HLF for years when we were playing smaller rooms. It was like, you can't get that big or else everyone in the band just hates you. And then I slowly kind of tried to like creep up on them, so I moved to 610 for a while, and then a couple years ago when no one was looking, ordered the 810, jumped it up one more step.
How long did it take till they noticed?
It didn't take long. As soon as they heard it, they're like, what the hell? Because it's like they're all like moving. Guitar amps, it's like they can get smaller and smaller and still sound great. So like the guitar amp started shrinking, the bass amp started growing. It was like a...
So my trick for that, lay the 810 cab on its side.
I know,
yeah,
sure, yeah, but I don't want it. I want it high, yeah.
But on its side, you can jump up on it.
Yeah, exactly. That is fun, yeah.
Right. How's the band feel about all that?
The band is okay with it. They generally don't really necessarily notice that the bass amp's bigger. They just notice it's a lot louder. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's always their concern, but it's always my excuse to say, I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
yeah, really, it was
the
there.
Same amp I've had forever since we were
Can't
playing
hear you.
club.
What?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
I take all the knobs off, move them back so it looks like they're lower. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah.
Very smart.
There you go. Can you give us a little background on the band, like a little bit of history of the band for maybe people that are watching that aren't familiar with the band?
Yeah, we're from Los Angeles. We're all born and raised here, and the band started maybe 10 years ago. And before that, me and the singer, Taylor Goldsmith, were in a couple bands when we were kids, and then those bands kind of broke up. We were already living in a band house in Northridge, and so we just decided to start a new band. We hired his little brother, who was at the time like 15 years old. He would come over and rehearse after high school. He would drive all the way from like the west side to the valley, like
That's how you know
rehearse.
it's real.
We'd like play him. We'd like work him to the bone, then send him back to like go do his homework, and then like do that. He was like spending however much money on gas every day, just trying to get back and forth all the way, and then put our first record out I think in 2009, and then the one we just recorded, I believe, is our 7th record.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you see anything different, like as far as the LA music scene per se from 10 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's a good problem for us, but we're definitely not as, we met all the people we knew when we were young, and we used to be around all the clubs playing, seeing all these people, and then as we started just going on tour more and kind of leaving LA most of the year, I feel like in a sense we've kind of fallen out of like the extremely like small local LA scene, but we still know all the people we've known for 10 years, and it's all the same. We met our original producer in just like at a show, and it was all that stuff used to always happen for us. So we're definitely very grateful for being like an LA band, and it was always we didn't feel like we had just moved here and we're trying to meet all these people. It was like we were from here, so everyone we knew was either growing up with us or someone's older brother, and we knew them, and we'd get into that show with him. You know what I mean? It was very familial.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because a lot, like you said, a lot of guys or gals move from other parts of the country to come to LA to start a band.
Yeah.
You guys grew up in the area.
Yeah, sure. And I was in bands starting in 3rd grade. I was in my first band. We used to play the Troubadour and the Roxy when I was like 12 years old.
Amazing.
So it was like we knew the manager there, and he would like kind of sneak us in, and we'd play, and he'd pay us like $80, and we'd be like, "Oh, great,
That's
amazing!"
awesome.
And we'd like get back in like our dad's car and drive home or whatever. So
There's so many artists right now that are like in their 20s and 30s, and they're just like, how in the world did they get paid $80 at the
Yeah,
gym?
no,
Yeah,
I know,
really?
it was, at the time it's probably $160 now.
Right.
No, it's. I was gonna ask a question along those lines where it's like I'm from the Midwest, and you know, playing in my bedroom or just like visualizing about, you know, when you're playing and practicing and you're dreaming about the future, it's like you have your bass idols, you have, you know, you visualize about. For me, it was like being out in California and being out in Los Angeles and playing at those big clubs. So growing up in that scene, like, what do you visualize from there? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely puts, I mean, it's like everyone from LA, I think, is a little bit jaded. I know that people grew up in this world thinking, like, I'm going to get to the Whiskey or to the Roxy.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like I just always went there, and those were the first shows I ever played were there, because it was just the venue that was in Hollywood, and that's where you're trying to play. So whether or not, whatever show you could get that was there, we'd do it. So it definitely put a little bit of a, I'm sure I have a skewed perception of what it means to like aspire to like play those kind of venues, but it's at the same time, it's like, those were just the local venues to me, you know what I mean? There was no other ones to play.
Who were some of those bass idols growing up that you were looking to sound like, looking to play like?
Definitely in the beginning, the first record I ever got from my mom that made me like want to play the bass when I was a little kid was Sly and the Family Stone, Fresh, which at the time I thought was Larry Graham that I was loving, you know, but later everyone told it's like that's Sly playing bass on most of that record, or Rusty Allen was another guy who played bass on that record. So those were, that record really changed my like life in terms of like, she put it on for me and I was just like, I mean, I was in 3rd grade. I was like, what's the sound? What's the low set? You know what I mean? Like, what am I hearing that's like so funky and cool? And she's like, that's the bass. You know, her like first husband was a bass player. She's like, that's the bass you like. And I was like, oh, cool. So I got a bass like the next day.
Your mom put it on for you?
Yeah, my mom's
That's
got great
awesome,
taste
My
in
mom
music.
put on Greek records for me. That's why I can only play stuff in like 7/8 now.
Me and my mom have very similar music taste, always have.
awesome.
Yeah, so it's good. She always gave me a bunch of great records. And then from there, I really fell in love, obviously, with the Motown and then Stax especially. So I was a big Duck Dunn guy for years. He was like, you know, if you made me pick in a fight, it would always be Duck Dunn over James Jamerson. And then as I got older, I'm like, I just like them both. Yeah, I don't need to pick one. You know what I mean? No one's forcing me to pick one of these two guys. They're both unbelievable.
Yeah. Were you ever into like the more modern sound, like the what I call?
I mean, not really. You know, everyone's got their like guilty pleasure music from when they're kids, and people of I'm 30 now or 31, so it's like, you know, from my generation, some of that stuff, people are like, you know, I grew up listening to like Third Eye Blind or whatever it was, and it's like, to me, because of my mom and because of just that was the music I fell in love with. I was always listening to oldies radio. I was always listening to Motown. I never really, I kind of missed out on like all of the music of my generation, which I was always fine with, because in terms of bass playing, it kind of didn't get better than where it was. You know what I mean? So I was like, if I'm listening for bass, then I don't need any of this stuff. I got all the stuff I need and an endless supply to dig through. You know what I mean? I'm still finding records from that era that I love that I'm like, holy shit, who's playing bass on this? And it takes me down another hole. So yeah, I was never really too into new dudes. I mean, I loved a bunch. There's obviously new bands that I listened to and liked, but none that stuck with me as much as those old ones did.
So what's one of your current guilty pleasures right now?
On the road over here, I was blasting Squeeze in my car, but again, I wouldn't call that a guilty pleasure. I love,
that's just cool music.
Yeah, and exactly. And to me, I'm always like, that was always one of those funny things, and I feel like people are always saying, like, what's your guilty thing that you listen to you're embarrassed of? And I'm like, if I'm listening to it, I'm not embarrassed of it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I would only be listening to it if it's got something that I really like about it. I don't put on music that I don't like, you know what I mean? Or that I wouldn't stand behind.
Yeah.
So,
what's your guilty pleasure?
Greek music.
Oh, get out.
7/8.
Yeah.
All day.
You're so full of it, man. Man, you're just like, wow.
What other, much along the lines of, you know, bassist you were aspiring to in early childhood memories in music incorporated with the bass, what are your earliest Ampeg memories? Like, what drew you to that brand? Or
a guy I went to high school with who was a bass player, and then he kind of stopped being a bass player, and he was like, oh, I've got this old SVT, like a Blueline or whatever, and it's vintage, it's a great one, you want to buy it off me? Like, I don't even play bass anymore. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'm sure I could use like a second bass amp, whatever, and I got that, and it was kind of like, that was it. And from there, it took me down to every Ampeg I've had, which have been multiple SVTs into B15s and all that kind of stuff. So once I heard it, I never stopped playing them.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's this experience that, and I see it all the time, like if I'm doing an event or, you know, like a contest where there's young kids, and, you know, they have combo amps at home, and, and the first time they plug into an SVT, especially an any all-tube amp, and they just feel that warmth, you just see the look on their face.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
So it's the same experience.
Yeah, and like, you can't go back. It's like once you hear it, you're just like, what am I going to like plug into some like little tiny combo, a solid state now, and you're just like, this isn't doing it. It's got no life. It takes all the kind of like the aura around the tone that these things give you, that the extra, you know what I mean? That's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the dimension of the sound.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
It
It's not as flat, and it's very, you feel like you're inside of it, and it's behind you and in front of you, and it's not just coming right at you out of a speaker, you know what I mean?
Yep, exactly.
When you started digging into different amp types and different tube amps, was that about the same time that you dug into building your own basses, or?
No, I didn't get into building instruments till years later, So I probably, maybe 6-7 years ago, I built my first bass, which was really just out of, you know, I accrued a pretty nice collection of vintage instruments. I still have them all, and I was just kind of, every time I pick up one, I'd be like, I like this about this one, but I also love this about this. I love my Ripper, how it feels, but I like, you know, how the humbucker sounds on this other bass. And so I just kind of wanted to make, like, kind of like the Cadillac of basses. Like, I was calling it, like, it'd be like, what one bass do you bring to a session to achieve multiple sounds or whatever, you know? So my first one I made had 3 pickups in it. Each one had an individual volume knob, so it was like, oh, you're looking for thick, muddy sound, then we turn up the mudbucker in the front. If you're looking for a thin, tinier, then we go to the DiMarzio Model G that I have in the bridge, and then there was a Ripper pickup in the middle for, like, that sound that I'd become used to.
Sure.
And then as that went on, I kind of just honed it down, and then since I started building them, they're the only basses I play.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Are you any plans on selling them, mass marketing them?
I would love to. I mean, they take a while for me to build, so I don't think it would be. And the problem is, I make guitars, I make basses, I sell the guitars. Every time I build a bass, I just end up wanting to keep it. You know what I mean? That's the problem. It's like, oh, so like I'll build a bass, and someone's like, oh, I'd love to buy a bass, and then I finish it. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll let you know when it's done. And then I play it, and I'm like, I don't want to sell this thing. Yeah, no, $100,000. That's the price. You know what I mean? It's like, essentially, they're just not for sale.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, I would love to have. I would need to get them out of my own hands in order to be selling them, and I would love for someone to put them into production and make them. I think they're great basses, but I can't get myself to put all that time physically into it and craft it with my own hands and then let it go. I'm just like, I need to keep it. Yeah.
No, I get you. Yeah, it's I tried collecting. Buying and selling vintage instruments, and I just turned into a collector.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're never gonna sell. That's everyone's greatest excuse. Like, oh, buying vintage instruments is a great investment. It's like, yeah, but you're never gonna sell them. So what's the investment? You know what I mean? It's like you'll literally never sell them, and then your grandkid will inherit them, and he won't know what it is, and he'll sell it for like $30. You know, it's like, what are you gonna do? It's not.
The running joke. My wife's gonna sell all my basses for what I told her I paid for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you're screwed. Yeah.
Is there any mindset shift between playing in Dawes and what you guys do, and then playing backing Mandy Moore, or is it just kind of like you're bringing the Dawes part to her setup? And
it's definitely different, and it's the first time for me. I mean, I dropped out of high school to go on tour with Dawes. We've been on tour as the same group for a long time, and we've backed up a lot of great artists in our time. Like, would be the band for Jackson Browne, and then we'd open up the shows and we'd play all his songs. So we've done that kind of stuff before. But we've always been also playing the show as our own. There's always been a Dawes set involved. And this is going to be the first tour that we're not doing a Dawes set. We're just there as her band. So it's definitely the first time in my life that I've kind of like gotten into a completely different mindset. Normally it's like, all right, we're going to play a Dawes set first. I'm going to do that good, and then I'm going to switch gears and immediately try to change my brain and play this other set. And this one's much more like, I'm just focusing on that one thing. It's not my band, which is kind of a nice relief in a lot of reasons. You know what I mean? I'm not worried about how many tickets are selling. I'm not worried about how happy everyone on the crew. It's like I just be myself and I show up and I play my hour-and-a-half set. And so in that sense, it's kind of relieving, And it's a lot less work. But then also there's always something to be said for playing anyone else's songs is always more work than playing your own. You know what I mean? For me, I don't think about a Dawes set could be 3 hours long, and I'm not thinking about it. They're all songs that I was involved in the making of, so it feels very natural. And this is like, I want to make sure if I'm only here representing the bass player of Mandy Moore's band, I want to make sure I just kill that exact hour perfectly, So, but it's fun and it's easy. It's easier in a lot of ways, harder in other ways to kind of jam stuff into my head that doesn't naturally just want to stay in there, But I like it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So Wylie, when you came in a while ago and we were shooting out different SVTs, I remember you really liked the original 69.
Sure.
I think the drive and the grit of it. And then a lot of people really like that Magnavox era, the mid-70s version. So we essentially were able to put both eras of the SVT into one head. We figured channel 2 with SVTs, like a lot of guys, they don't use channel 2, or the other guy on the bill's using channel 2 just to not mess with the amp, but we really wanted to make it count. So we got the mid-70s in channel 2, the 1969 in channel 1, and we would love for you to play through and just
Sure. Yeah, very stoked about the use of channel 2 for sure, because forever that was my move. Yeah, can the opening band use your bass amp? But they can use channel 2.
Channel 2.
You know what I mean? Yeah, of course. Oh, by all means, plug into channel 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I don't have to say that at all. Yeah.
Right, now
they
it's-
just can't use the bass amp.
Yeah, they can't.
No, hell no. Yeah.
Yeah, I know where you can get one though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, like Dom was saying, you know, we basically repurposed channel 2 as the mid 70s, channel 1 is the 69. So let me unjump these.
Sure.
I mean, you can turn down each channel as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
So, but so yeah, you said you like your first choice was the 69, the original Blueline Linden.
Yeah, sure.
That seems to be like everybody's
what's
holy
wrong
grail.
with that amp? Yeah,
Right,
nothing. Yeah.
right.
Definitely have all that same kind of like high-end bite that has without getting aggressive on your ear. It's just kind of like that's the whole problem with every bass amp is like either you get, there's too much bass and then all of a sudden you lose all the clarity out in the house, or you don't, or whatever, and then it's very few bass amps where you can achieve low end with like a kind of a nice mid high end that can still kind of like give you two notes at once and you're getting the overtones and the undertones at the same time.
Sure.
So this definitely seems to have that. Just from plugging in for a second, I could tell. It's just like you get that nice kind of like scooped out, and it's like attacking it from both sides. You get the highs and the lows, but not too low and not too high, which is really great. You know? Sounds amazing.
Yeah, and that's just channel 1. So.
Yeah, which is crazy. And until I came and did the last thing, I never even knew about the jump. I mean, I've had SVTs forever, and no one ever told me you can jump them.
Yeah.
Which maybe it wouldn't have made as much of a difference on one of the old ones, but on this, when we plugged it in and jumped it, it's like, okay, so now this is a whole other amp that I can get. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of times, like on the older SVTs, the only reason why guys would jump them was almost like what I would call like a pseudo bi-amping.
Sure.
They dial one channel in for all their highs and lows, and then another channel in, which you can do that with. Obviously you dial in channel 1 for all mid-range and cut your bass and treble,
which is cool, and then you have a devoted bass channel that you can then, and that's also nice for the fights with every sound guy that you have, where it's like we're getting too much low end, but the mid sounds good, and if you were in a one-channel amp and you turn it down, you're gonna affect everything.
Exactly.
And this, you could essentially be like, I'm just gonna bring down truly a channel dedicated to bass, bring the low end down, and still get all the kind of mid attack that I want, and let him worry about the low end in the house. You know?
And you're not sacrificing your volume by doing that.
Yeah, exactly, which is so nice.
Which always pisses off the sound guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Plug in the
and
channel
the bass
2.
player,
So that's channel 2. So it's going to be a little more headroom.
Great, growly.
My arm's standing up there.
Yeah, exactly, and that's that classic SVT growl that everyone wants. You know what I mean? That you can't get off other amps. That's like the sound that SVTs do that nothing else does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that crazy growl. It's not distortion. It's not fuzz. It's just like bite.
It's just a growl.
Yeah.
So let's do this. Let's plug into. We'll jump out of channel 1 into channel 2. Now, do you play with a pick at all too, or is it mostly fingers?
All fingers for me. Yeah, I've just never been able to play. It's like I hold a pick, and 3 seconds later, the pick's across the room. You know what I mean? It's like, and it flies
Keep them
away.
on the stand just so you can throw them in the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
With your phone number.
But yeah, I mean, I do like to grow out. I grow out my fingernails, so I kind of get that pick attack on it. That's a lot of the whole thing. Is I feel like I'm kind of getting, kind of 2 notes with one pull, so it's like you get the pad of your finger first, and then kind of like the overtone.
The click.
Yeah, the click that I'm after. Yeah, which is
on.
cool, and it makes it kind of very percussive sounding.
Cool.
But I've just never had the dexterity. I mean, I could play a simple song with a pick
Sure.
or whatever, but
Sure.
anytime, if you asked me to play a Dawes set with a pick, it would sound terrible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every little move that I'm used to knowing how to do and I don't even think about, all of a sudden I'm like, I can like only do downstrokes. I'm like, oh, nightmare. You know, it's terrible.
That's cool.
Was there a conscious decision when you were growing up, when you first started playing, where you're just like, yeah, I'm this guy, I'm not like that guy?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to just like the music I listened to. It was like I never thought to play with a pick because I was listening to like Motown records and all this stuff, and I was like, okay, so you get flat wounds on your bass, which I had from day one. I mean, I've never had round wounds on a bass ever. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah, I mean, at home now I put them on a bass, but I never play it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like, so I've always had flat wounds,
That's cool.
and then to me, I was always like, if you're going, obviously the sound of flat wounds with a pick is cool, and it does a different thing, but
Yeah.
I've kind of been able to figure out how to achieve that kind of sound just with my nail
Sure.
or whatever, you know, but it's the same thing. Yeah, I was never in love with a bass player who played with a pick enough to then try to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Only later could I appreciate bass players that played with picks.
Yeah.
But then it was like, you can't teach an old dog new trick.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I was like, great. Now I'll never know how to play with a pick because I'm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, let's get back into the amp here for a second. So
Sure.
one of the things that I think we discovered in the development of this amp was the DI.
We thought that bassists, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's this acceptance of just like, yeah, it's a tube. You spend all this money on a tube amp, and then
Sure.
you listen to the DI out, and it's not as pristine as you would want a really high-end studio tube DI to be for bass.
Of course, yeah.
But I think bassists were just like, yeah, whatever. Like, we're just concerned with like the front part of the amp.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So
They're
we
not
really
thinking
honed
about-
in on this design and really changed a lot internally to make sure that this DI out is like a high-end tube DI out. We were
Cool.
tapping from the preamp tubes. We are able to get channel 1 and channel 2 pre and post EQ. So all that jumping you're doing, all the
Wow,
different
it all goes through there.
configurations, all going through.
Wow.
And we
That's
really
cool.
improved the noise floor. And
Amazing.
so yeah, we just really, I mean, we wanted to go old school with the nuances, the design, the aesthetic. We have edge front panel, the Blueline graphics, but we really wanted it to have all the modern amenities
Sure.
to just, you know, tack off all the boxes of all the touring requirements.
Yeah. At what era did the SVT start incorporating a DI in the back?
I think it was when the SVT CL finally came out
Okay.
with the gain and the master.
Sure. Yeah.
That
yeah.
was the first DI.
one with it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, because up until that point, that was like back in the old St. Louis music days. Up until that point, the last SVT built was the original Skunk Works.
Sure.
That they built from all the spare parts that they bought from the previous owners, and those were built knockoffs of an original SVT. And
Sure.
none of the original SVTs had DIs.
Yeah,
on
yeah. I
them.
mean, I've kind of never thought about it until you just said that, but I was
Yeah.
like, I know the old ones must have not had
Yeah.
those in there. Yeah, yeah. So it obviously started somewhere. But then all the times that you guys have changed VRs and all that stuff, did they used to all have the same sort of DI system built into them, and it wasn't connected to the preamp tubes?
No, they're all a little bit different per
Okay.
amp. But yeah, this one we really just
Tried to like make
re-looked
that
at
a
everything.
focus point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is good. Yeah, I mean, because everyone, it's like your DI is like. I mean, a lot of times people don't even think about that. They buy the fanciest amp they can
Yeah.
get, whatever, and then they go to the club and they're like, if they're, either they don't even know that their SVT has a DI
Right.
on the back, and then they plug into some $25 DI at the club, and it's like, okay, why? That's what the sound dude's probably using out there. 'Cause
Exactly.
He's lazy and he doesn't want to
Right.
deal with getting a mic on a bass amp. And so then all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing? So
Yeah.
yeah, I've always been big on DIs. I've owned 100 crazy DIs. I used to own the SVT DIs,
Yep.
which
Okay,
I
yeah.
loved.
Yep.
And I've gone tube. I had a bunch of Tab Funkin' Work, like V71s.
Oh, wow.
Were amazing, but terrible to tour with because they would just rattle and break. And then currently I've been using those Acme Motown DIs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which are solid state, but
Yep.
sound incredible. Yeah, they're amazing. And so,
Okay.
But I'm excited to hear this thing, how it sounds.
Yeah.
Give it to our sound dude. Yeah, he'll be stoked.
Yeah, that was, and like Dom was saying, it's like the original thought was, because everybody that came in, everybody loves the 69 in the mid 70s, and the original thought was, let's do a soup to nuts.
Yeah.
No DI, leather strap handles, or
Sure,
something
yeah.
like that. But it's like, all right, that's, there's a reason why technology has advanced over the last 50
And I'm all
years.
about that. That's like
So-
the whole reason I make these basses. It's important, I think, to people get so obsessed with vintage gear, and I'm one of them too.
Sure.
I love vintage gear and I love old things, but especially with bass amps, I've always said it's like there's nothing that desirable about an old bass cabinet. You know what I mean? It's like you want a new bass cabinet. Anyone that's ever owned an old bass cabinet knows that it's just on its way out because bass cabinets have a lifespan. You know, the heads can last forever, but the cabinets, you're going to blow speakers. It's like, I've blown 100 speakers in my day. It's like, it happens, and it's important to kind of like, grab the things that are great about the old ones, but also there's amazing things about new gear and new technology that really makes a difference, and it makes it just easier for the sound guy, easier for the band on stage, for clarity.
It's
so
reliable.
It's like, it's good to not get too. It's obviously it's a fad of people to get upset. I'm using the same screws and the same everything is exactly like it was in 1910. I'm like, well, shit sucked in 1910. You know what I mean? It's like there was no great bass. Like, what are you doing? It's like it's time to kind of just like blend the two, and that's where you get these new, amazing, great things, because there are things that the old ones did better, but there's also things that were wrong with the old ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking of cabs, we now have a Heritage 810 or SVT 810 AV to match the heads. So
sick.
U.S. designed and assembled, and with the custom Eminence drivers.
Yep.
Nice.
New jack plate on the back, new commemorative Heritage badge. It's all the lowercase, old school aesthetics to match the head. So
cool.
Yeah.
So what the HLF are the ports at the bottom, right?
Correct.
But are 810s ported at the bottom? They
Nope.
are. Or they're not.
No, they're.
But the 610 was, right?
610 was ported.
Yeah, sure.
So just for anybody that's paying attention here, so all of our cabinets say either H, HE, HLF, LF. So if it's just an E, like the A10E, this is an AV for Anniversary, but it's essentially an A10E, there's no horns or porting in the cabinet.
Either.
No, so this cabinet, if you were to cut this in half, you'd actually see 4 210 compartments.
Whoa.
And now you have 2 410s.
Stop. Oh, man. You know, I've been on the road for the last month, and now you're really messing with me. Yeah. So the top 410s have a separate input from the bottom 410s.
Got it.
So if you want to run stereo or biamp, you can access.
Or you can play it as a 410.
Or you could just plug it into the main input and play it as a full 810 too.
Yeah, sure. That's cool.
But yeah, so if it says E, it's an enclosure. If it says H, there's a horn in it, like the HLF.
Yeah, mine's an H that I use. My 810 has a horn, I know. Yeah.
And then if it says LF, it's ported, because the LF supposedly stands for low frequency or low frequency support. So,
nice.
But yeah, this is it. Literally, it's a box with 8 10-inch speakers in it. And don't start.
Your math checked out.
But you know, the thing is, it's like, you know, your bass with flat wounds sounds. It's got that old school Motown sound.
Sure.
You plug in like an active jazz bass with super bright wounds.
Sure.
Guys will plug in and go, does it have a horn in it? Because it's like, it's really bright and sounds crisp.
Cool.
No, man, it's just, it literally, it's a 50-year-old design.
Yeah, sure. And again, I mean, anytime you try to, I'm sure like a horn is just another thing that bass frequency wants to try to break all the, you know what I mean? It's like, it's like fights it, you know what I mean? So without the horn, it probably sounds, it's just like, those speakers can put out a lot of sound.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, a whole range of it,
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we were like, what, at volume level 2 out of 10? And we're like shaking the ceiling.
I always think about, like, you know, every time someone comes up to my sound guy, you're too loud on stage. I look back, I'm like, who gets this amp up above 5? You know what I'm saying? I've never even taken it to center before everyone's like, turn it down.
Right. I know. That's, you know, again, keep in mind, all this stuff was designed before there were PAs.
Yeah, sure.
Like efficient
monitors, PAs,
so
all that stuff.
If you wanted to be heard at Madison Square Garden, you put a row of cabinets behind you.
Yeah, I wish it was still like that,
Now, do you guys, do you guys use in-ears or anything like that? Or
the rest of the guys in the band all use in-ears except me. I've tried it a few times. I really don't like it for a multitude of reasons. One of which, obviously, I bought, you know, the craziest bass 16 driver in-ears you could get.
That's always the touring joke is like, how many drivers you got?
Yeah, exactly. So because I tried them once years ago. I have a whole thing with just, I feel I'm really shut off when I'm in there, and I feel kind of weird. It's like, okay, so you spend your whole life being a dude that grows up playing in garage bands, playing at venues with no and then all of a sudden, like, that, you know, music as like shit is loud in a room, and you're hearing, and the way wherever you walk on the stage, it sounds different. That's like, in my mind, that's like how it works. And then you put on in-ears, and it's like, not only are you in this little enclosure in your own head, but also no matter where you go, it sounds exactly the same, which was always so weird for me.
Getting that feedback from the crowd too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and weirdly, it's like, as the bass player, I would be more concerned that my singer is getting the reaction out of the crowd that he wants, but everyone else in the band, they're all singers too, so they love the in-ears. It really helps. And my favorite part about the in-ears is that they're all on them, so I can sneak myself louder. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But even still, they're like, "How are you so like? Will you take out the bass in my ears?" And my guy's like, "There's no bass in your ears." You know, I'm just like, "Fuck, all right."
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't use them. I just it's like, you know, I'll spend half the show sometimes leaning next to I just love hearing it loud and, you know, right in my face. And there's so much, you know, I'm sure with a great monitor guy, you can achieve a great bass sound in your in-ears. Of course you can, but it's never going to be the same. It's not you're not hearing the amp in your face. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you would be.
Right.
The irony of spending your whole childhood growing up and like with headphones on or small amps, aspiring to get to that stadium, and then you get to the stadium and you're like,
And they hand
here's
you
some
a set of
headphones.
in-ears.
Yeah.
Here you go,
Yeah,
we're on
exactly,
in-ears
yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yep. Yeah, and obviously the bigger venues we've played, you understand why people wear in-ears, you know, on these huge venues, because like, sure, you plug a 810 in a stadium, it sounds crazy out in the stadium, you know, and no matter where, it's like, your amp could be at 10 and you might not hear it 5 feet away from it because it just dissipates into a stadium. So I get that. Luckily, I have the luxury of not playing stadiums all the time, so I can turn it up, yeah.
Okay, so before we go, obviously, Wylie, we want to say thank you for coming out and
my pleasure,
and giving us your time here today and giving us your time on this entire project. You, like I said, you were one of the first artists that came out when we first started talking about this, and you know, you gave us your insight and your ideas. So I mean, you have a lot into this amp as anyone else does too.
And I'm happy about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. So that's what we got for today. Thank you all for checking in on SVT Time. My name's Dino.
I'm Dom.
And this is Wylie. Wylie, would you play us out?
Sure.